How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Barely There podcast, part 3 of our off-season specials. Just kind of off-season preview, following everything that's going on with Chicago Bears. Obviously, we have the first overall pick. We are, in the words of Lucas Perfetti, the belle of the ball. Ryan Poles has literally the future of the Chicago Bears in his hands, and we're going to see where that takes us. But before then, I'm Duke Coughlin. You can follow me at that pod guy Duke on Twitter. As always, I'm joined by Lucas Perfetti. You can follow him at LucasPerfetti46. Be sure to follow the podcast at Barely There Pod. Subscribe on YouTube. Like the video if you like it. Join the comment section over on YouTube if you haven't already. You can also get them over on Facebook. Anyway, it has been an interesting week as far as draft prospects go, as well as the NFL Combine kind of cranking off here today. I mean, officially, with workouts and everything like that. We've had the last 2 days of guys talking, interviews, teams getting a chance to talk to some of these guys, as well as being able to talk to the media, kind of give everyone their headspace. Lucas, I'll let you kind of take off here in a second. But beforehand, I just want to start this off with a non-Bears topic because it makes me laugh because I live in Wisconsin and I hear Wisconsin radio. And I got to listen to Packer fans break down Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM, discussing the future of his franchise and discussing the elephant in the room about Aaron Rodgers, and him very, very kind of blatantly saying that Aaron needs to be a fit. It needs to be a situation where they feel comfortable on both sides about guys coming back, and that they're really comfortable kind of shooing in the Jordan Love era. And Packer fans are pretty split and pretty ready to burn down the state over it. And it has been very entertaining to listen to. But Lucas, how you feeling about that? Obviously, because we just love Aaron Rodgers on this podcast, as any Chicago Bears fan should. And how you feeling about some of the storylines heading into the first week of the Combine?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I fucking hate Aaron Rodgers. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like I'm starting to see the human side of him at this point. Like, I think the media does really like to fucking push it into him, because he doesn't really give them access, and it's all kind of through Pat McAfee. Like, I do think there is part of that, like this 3-day retreat. Like, I don't know, the guy's close to retirement, right? Like, the media is the ones that are putting on the watch party when he's probably just like, yeah, let me think about this and I'll know if I'm playing in a little bit. Like, he's getting up there in age. Every year he could retire. That being said, I do like the way Goot is handling it, because like he's a cocksucker. Like, Aaron Rodgers is synonymously a cocksucker, and he has been really holding this team hostage almost, right? Like, even though I do think the Packers or the media is kind of overblowing it a lot, because there's nothing to talk about right now. But I think like there is some validity to it, right? Like, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I think he should. Realistically, they fucked up. They could have gotten rid of him and Devontae Adams last year, gotten a haul, and really kickstarted their rebuild. Had a full year to look at Jordan Love to see like, hey, how is he going to work out in the future? Like, do we need to like heavily scouting, quarterbacks coming out in this draft? Like, right, you could have really kickstarted things for yourself, and I think you lost a lot of value on Rodgers. Well, you did get some good picks for Devontae Adams. You're still pressed against the cap. You're still in a rough spot. And I just feel like it's, something that you should have done last year and you fucked up. So I'm glad they didn't do it. They'll still get some value for Aaron Rodgers if they decide to trade him. I think he ends up back in Green Bay, but you got to play hardball with him. If he's going to act like a baby, you kind of got to treat him like one, right?
Well, it just hits a point where, I do think there's something to what you said about Aaron in the media. I really have a hard time feeling bad for the guy, because
I don't feel bad. No.
Sometimes it feels like he farms the attention a little bit, and he does it. I think he does it a lot to help out his buddy Pat McAfee to get views on there. Not that Pat needs any help, because Pat's show is fucking always entertaining, and honestly, it was entertaining before Aaron Rodgers was ever even in the equation. But the viewership in the entire state of Wisconsin just skyrockets when Aaron Rodgers is on their feed, even as much as they all admit they hate the fact that he's on McAfee. And they don't even watch it per se. I guarantee views are through the fucking roof. And I've even caught myself watching a few times, because I like I like listening to Aaron just put his foot in his mouth constantly, literally, whether it's COVID toe, whether it's, him talking about his stats and his MVPs and, really stroking his own ego instead of bringing up the fact that the Packers have constantly fallen flat when they've really should have made Super Bowl runs. I love it. I eat that shit up. And I know Packer fans hate it, which makes me love it more. But I just really think Aaron brings a lot of it on himself. And I think there really needs to be something said about this, about how much he holds that team hostage when he waits like this, because we're in March now. And, they kind of thought the whole darkness retreat, he was going to come out and kind of have an answer for him right off the bat. And he's still kind of dragging his feet on the decision. You know what I mean? Like, I will give Packer fans this, and I will give the Green Bay Packers this. They've put up with this pretty well over the last 2 years of kind of letting him really kind of run his mouth, let him kind of fucking take his time, not work with receivers during the off season, not worrying about what he's doing as far as workouts, because he's doing his own little freaking procedures and all that other shit. But they've kind of let him be him. And then when he puts in the season that he puts in last year, I think that's kind of where Gutekunst had the wake up call, where it's all right, listen, this guy isn't our entire franchise anymore. As much as the aura of Aaron Rodgers will always be with the Green Bay Packers, did he look like Aaron Rodgers last year?
No.
And that's even, I'll give him the fact that there wasn't an abundance of receiver talent. And obviously you're going to go from Devontae Adams to Christian Watson, who was a rookie. That's going to be a bit of a drop off. But we were always told for years how Aaron was the person that elevated players, and that's what great players do. And I just don't think Aaron has that motor anymore.
It's not there. No.
And I really think you hit the nail on the head. I think the Packers should have got ahead of this. I think they waited a year too long. So even me thinking Gutekunst has finally come to his fucking senses as a Bears fan, looking at it from the outside in, he should have did this a while ago. He should have did it when the value was at the absolute highest. Nobody wants to trade a quarterback coming off an MVP year, but when you see kind of what's going on in this guy's head, you kind of got to consider it. You got to be can I kickstart the next 10 years right now? You know what I mean? We have one down year with Jordan Love. We need to see what Jordan Love is anyway, because now you're in a situation like you brought up where they're in cap hell. They do have a little bit of draft capital, but not an insane abundance or anything of draft capital per se. And they're tight against the cap. Old friend alert. This is also something I did want to bring up, and I don't want to sit here and talk about the Packers the whole time, but it's not like Adrian Amos isn't going to make it on the roster next year either. He was asked directly about where Adrian Amos would fit on the roster, and he kind of gave an answer that we kind of like some of the guys we already have on the roster, and we like the draft class at safety this year. And he also said the same thing at tight end. So the Green Bay Packers are going to look like a different roster next year, and it's going to be by the process of Aaron Rodgers taking up quite a bit of that money. Obviously hasn't been a guy that's really thought about restructuring as well, but I don't know. I love watching it all as a Bears fan. I love watching it just burn. I told Packer fans for the last 2 years, you need to get a jump on trading Aaron Rodgers. That wasn't a personal thing where it's I want Aaron Rodgers out of the division, because Lucas, I'm with you. I want to see the Chicago Bears beat the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. I genuinely really do. I want him to go out on a sour note like it went out with Brett Favre with the Packers, where we kicked the shit out of them 2 fucking games in a row. I think Brian Urlacher had his first career pick 6 on Brett Favre in his last regular season game against the Bears. Charles Tillman ate him alive as well and got a pick 6, I believe, himself in the first game. So that's the type of send off I want for Aaron Rodgers, because he has more than earned that. But the Packers would have gotten so much more. They would have gotten that Russell Wilson type package from
100%. They would have gotten more.
And they dropped the ball on that. And even if Jordan Love ends up being a good quarterback for them, I don't see them being an incredibly competitive roster moving forward. They're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions, and they're going to have to completely rehaul that roster to fit in the cap space. And them kind of doubling down on the Aaron Rodgers situation and paying a ton of players a lot of money last year, it's just really, it aged like milk.
Well, and then their draft class, they've had some decent drafts with players that have been good, but they haven't really hit the nail on the head in the first round. It hasn't been great for them, right? They took 2 guys that really didn't play too well last year. Both the Georgia guys, right? I think they took a DT and a linebacker. I can't think of it right now.
They did. They took defensive tackle and linebacker, both from Georgia.
I remember that. So, it's just kind of one of those things where there's a lot to unpack there. the first thing is, it's funny about Aaron Rodgers because he will complain about rookies not knowing where to be and young receivers and wanting to have vets, and that's why they sign Randall Cobb, but he's not willing to put that work in with them in the offseason, right? Like, it makes no fucking sense. And that's the difference between Aaron Rodgers, who, in my opinion, still his prime, there was like a stretch there from 07 to 09, whatever. It was like he was by far the best thrower of the football, best pure passer I've ever seen in my lifetime. Like, the shit I would see him do was ridiculous. But that's the difference between him and Tom Brady, right? Like, that's the difference between a winner and someone that doesn't care as much. That's my personal opinion. So I get it that you're getting older, and Tom may have taken the offseason off last year with all of his stuff, and that's probably why the Bucs weren't as good as they could have been. But, you know, it's just kind of like you make your own bed, you sleep in it. And this writing's been on the wall. We've covered this in previous podcasts that don't need mentioning, but like, we have been saying this, like, dude, they keep kind of racking up this credit card bill. Like, they keep delaying things into the future. And the reality is Aaron was starting to lose it, like, before, you know, Matt LaFleur got in there, when they installed an offense that was really there to kind of highlight Devontae Adams, make things easier on Aaron Rodgers. Like, he was losing it a few years ago. Now he is no longer that guy, right? Like, he still got it, and on a very good roster, honestly, like on a team like the Jets, I think he could do very well. But it's going to be because he's more of a game manager than the old Aaron Rodgers. So you're right, dude. After 2 MVP seasons, I think you would have gotten twice the draft capital you would have gotten for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was a great quarterback, elite quarterback when he was traded, right? And he had a rough year, but Aaron Rodgers was it was a different caliber at that point. You're a back-to-back MVP winner. So they fucked up, you know, and it's hard to deny that they fucked up by not trading him. And then now to move forward, because
I do want to preface that that's my fault. We did talk about the Packers there for a minute. But it's important to keep an eye on the division rivals, especially the ones who have been running the division for the last, I don't care how many years. Anyway, continue, Lucas.
Yeah, if we're starting neutral with Ryan Poles, right, wiping away year one and just seeing, okay, now it's time to build back up. So far, I like what he said in press conferences. And one of the main highlights that I liked was that they asked him, I believe it was on like a sidebar show. It wasn't even like the typical interview or press conference, but they asked him if, hey, would you want Aaron Rodgers traded out? And he was like, we're going to worry about our team, but honestly, we kind of want to get over that hump. And I think that's really important, right? Like, you look at the Bulls getting over the hump of the Detroit Pistons. You look at some of those teams, like you break down that wall and you start becoming a better team, a better franchise. So I like that he said that. Yeah. And then some of the other things that I think he reinforced was, we're not, kind of in line with what I said last week. Like, I don't think we're going to be major players. He did say, like, hey, we have the ability to be more aggressive than we did last year in terms of going after some of this first wave players and some of the top of market guys. And he's excited about that. But he did mention, like, we didn't do this to be in the next position in a year or two. Like, we did this so we can build a sustainable program. So I think, I think free agency, like, so far, like, what he's saying is good. And I do think he has been pretty aligned with what he's going to say, aside from, hey, I'm going to prioritize a Roquan Smith extension, which we're all upset about. Roquan Smith's an all-pro. He's going to be a generational player. It's funny now because Tremaine Edmonds came up big, and we talked about, hey, this would be an interesting guy to sign, right? And people are talking about him like he's a Roquan replacement. Like, let's not get it fucking twisted, bro. Like, Roquan is a 1, 2, 3 inside linebacker in the NFL. Like, Tremaine Edmonds is still kind of trying to find his way. Like, they're on different fucking stratospheres, bro.
And even with that, he'll still get paid, because it's like him and TJ Edwards in this free agent class. And TJ Edwards, he's definitely getting paid. And probably get paid by the Eagles, but to say there's no value in an inside linebacker in the market, there's reasons why teams pay these guys. It's not just complete conjecture. It's not like these GMs are like completely not paying attention to the current stance of the NFL. But anyway, continue.
If we were to pay Tremaine Edmonds $17 million a year, like, why wouldn't we have just paid fucking Roquan 20? You know, like,
yeah. Yeah.
We're on a different fucking stratosphere. Like, I like Edmonds, and I even said, like, he's an intriguing guy to bring in. He's more of a system fit, kind of developed in a Buffalo system where you would think he's going to be technically sound. I do think he's a little bit more aggressive in the run game, but like stats wise, everything film wise, like they're not even fucking comparable, bro. Like Roquan's a lot better. So if it only takes $3 million more to get Roquan instead of Tremaine Edmonds, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's we've already beaten that fucking dead horse. But like I don't think that's the way we're gonna go. Personally, I think the Roquan situation did tip his hand in a lot of ways. I mean, it's funny because you probably gave that to me self-consciously by saying he doesn't tip his hand, but I think with handling the Roquan situation, it did tip the hand a little bit. I think we're gonna look in the draft, and I think we're gonna go bargain bin shopping for linebackers. I think there's some guys in this draft who, depending on what they do for the rest of the combine, and honestly, even just their body work in college, there are some potential hidden gems in this class. There's not anybody like setting the world on fire. There's not that Micah Parsons in this draft. You know what I mean? There's not that Roquan Smith in this draft, but there are some pretty good linebackers, and I could see us really kind of paying attention to that. As I said before, and it kind of goes into the point you were talking about how like Ryan Poles isn't looking at fixing this all in 1 year, that he kind of wants to look at he's trying to take a long-term approach with a lot of this. That's why I still think, like, if you are building a team with a quarterback you think is the guy, you need to spend draft capital on positions you don't plan on paying in the near future, and that's going to be on the defensive side of the football. I understand wanting to get blue chip players on the offensive side of the football, and we're certainly going to. I think once we trade back, I could see us getting a little bit finding a guy in a skill position or potentially on one of the outside blocks at tackle, or even a guard, and potentially falling in love with somebody that way in the first or second round. But I really do think we need to look at guys that we don't need immediate upgrades on per se. And even if we do, positions that are not surrounded around the quarterback, and that's going to be the defensive side of the football. And I think he showed that in the first draft. I don't think it was crazy to say that Justin Fields needed help last year. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's crazy to say that giving him a little help probably wouldn't have hindered his growth very much, if at all. But we still drafted a corner and a safety. And you want to know what? That corner and safety are looking pretty good. And that corner and safety are going to be able to sit on a pretty decent little contract for the next few years. You know what I mean? And if they prove themselves, yeah, maybe you might have to make a difficult decision between one or the other, or you're in a good enough situation with the rest of your roster where you could potentially use a tag and sign another one for long-term. But I really think that's going to be the plan moving forward. And I think with the money that you have, I think you go into free agency. I don't think you sign anybody over the age of 28. I think 28 is the absolute oldest, and that's only because Mike McGlinchey is at 28, and I still think he would be a great fit for us. I think you sign young. I think those are the guys that you look to get, even if they're not maybe in the top tier of the free agent market. But I'm still after hearing his comments, I'm still kind of in line with the plan that I think he's going to do that I said in previous episodes. I really think it's a situation where he's going to try to spend money on the offensive side of the football, try to focus on keeping guys on the offensive side of football and paying them, and using the draft and getting a lot of draft capital to kind of fill in the blanks on the defensive side of the football, while having, finding some pretty good diamonds in the rough. Getting Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker in the second round, it's like, okay, you still use second round picks on that, but like, they've 31 other NFL teams passed him in the first round. You know what I mean? So like, I think he deserves a little bit of credit for that. And I'm somebody who's been kind of hard pressed to give Ryan Poles credit. So
yeah, I mean, I just, another thing I did some research, and you're going. So I did some research and
keep rolling.
I got you, Jag. So I did some research, and the cap floor, from what I have taken in, is it's taken over a 4-year span. So it's not something that like, hey, you need to be at a certain number every single year. I believe they did that for the COVID year, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I would love some input on this as well. If someone is a cap guru, please let me know. But from all the research I've done, it's over a 4-year figure. So if you look at the way the Bears have been over the last 4 years in terms of being pressed against the cap, the Bears don't really have to spend nearly as much as people think to be up to that cap floor. And I also think some if it's the opposite, right? Like maybe you do have to get to a certain number. I think that it'll be some 1-year deals as well. Maybe if they are the guys that are over 28, because I agree, you don't really want to pay someone that's past the age of 28, especially on like a 4-year deal, right? Like you're really looking for those 26-year-olds. Deron Payne was franchise tagged promptly. I know we were expecting it, but very promptly after that tag opened up. So, now it's like people are shifting their focus to other guys, who their dream free agent signings are. There's a lot of teams that are going to be competing for these signings as well. So, we'll see how free agency plays out, but I know we want to get into the draft because it is combine season, right? Unless you got something else to say about free agent. Last thing about the interviews, very clearly, in my opinion, they affirmed their commitment to Justin Fields and building around him. Like, while they're like, oh yeah, we could pick a quarterback, they're talking about like, and Ryan Poles even admitted fault, like we need to give him the weapons so that he can develop, and we need to see where Justin Fields, we know where Justin Fields need to develop, and he needs to work on those things. So it's a two-pronged thing, but he did admit like we need to get some guys around him. It's something that him and Matt Eberflus said, which I think is very important, right? Like you want to have a GM that realizes and is self-reflecting. I feel like that's something that Pace was a little bit laser focused on. Whereas, you want someone to take their L's on the chin, the same way we respect bloggers and other fucking podcasters when like they take their L's on the chin, like admit your faults, right? That goes a long way, especially in a place like Chicago. So
Yeah, no doubt. And you nailed it there at the end. In a place like Chicago, it does really go a long way. I still do think, and Poles is smart. He's good. Like he knows what he's doing when he's talking to the media, and he knows kind of how to work around like what he's done or whatever. I mean, he did do a good job kind of admitting like, hey, we need to get guys around Justin Fields. But I'm still under the belief year one, he still kind of was just trying to see if what Fields was. You know what I mean? I think he wanted to see the trial by fire. Like, I'm going to give this guy bare minimum as possible. I have to destroy this roster anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I need to have to build this for the future. So like in the meantime, Justin, show us what you got. And you know what I mean? Like people like to use the argument that like Justin Fields, he ran more than he passed and all that and everything like that. And that's fair. If you want to use, there's a lot of arguments that can be made there. And, I'm not going to sit here and argue with everyone who says it because it's like the popular thing to do now. But like, he kind of just did what he had to do to keep the offense rolling. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much you can do as a quarterback when there's guys just not getting separation. There's guys you don't trust to throw the football to. When Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney are really the only guys you can go to, and defenses are kind of locking in on that, it can make things a little bit difficult. When teams know you're going to run the ball with the running back, it makes things a lot difficult when you're trying to pass and they have those two guys covered. You know what I mean? When you have a guy like Chase Claypool, who really just, I don't care how anyone wants to spin it, Chase Claypool was not good for us last year. You know what I mean? There's just no way to get around that. And a lot of people need to accept defeat. That doesn't mean I'm completely out on Chase Claypool, but it means I need to see more out of Chase Claypool.
A lot more.
So, like, you have to, even if you want to say that Justin Fields is the running back, a quarterback, blah, 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 whatever, because we've heard it all at this point, you have to acknowledge he just did what he fucking thought was going to work at the time. You know what I mean? And he doesn't have control over play calling. You know what I mean? He's too young for that, especially with a first year offense coordinator, first time kind of working with Getsy. I wouldn't mind seeing how that kind of grows. I wouldn't mind seeing kind of what type of checks Justin gets to be able to kind of get into, if he can fucking, kill a play, kind of get into the next play. Kind of similar to like how we saw Mitch in year 2 of the Nagy offense. As shit as that offense was, we got to see kind of the kill call a little bit more, where Mitch kind of got to kill the first play call and get into the second one.
That's something that Eberflus highlighted on as well, was like, hey, Getsy was new as well, right? Like, we were all new. First time GM, first time play caller, first time head coach. Like, he was like, the offense started getting better and better because we incorporated the runs, but we wanted to kind of measure like how many hits do we want this guy taking, all of those things, which is something we complained about. They didn't do a good job of it, in my opinion, but it's all things that they kind of acknowledged, right? Like in the Eberflus presser, just not surrounding him with talent and taking a while to actually understand what he does well, what the other guys in the offense do well, to actually build that offense around them, which is extremely encouraging. You would like to be that you would like that to be expedited, and I'm sure it will when there's less new faces coming in every single year, right? Like people are going to understand more. You don't have to teach the first concept in order to teach the the counterplay off of that concept, right? Like they already kind of know the standard. So we'll that's something that we really were desperately asking for with Matt Nagy. Was cater your offense to the guys that you have on it, and it looks like it's something they were trying to do. And let's be real here. Even if Justin Fields is a running back or is being called a running back, they were putting up like fucking 30 a game. After that mini bye they had and after they came out against the Patriots, like they were putting up fucking points every single week. Like we have never seen anything like that. And sure, there were some times he was moving the ball with his legs. And trust me, as someone who wants to see the ball come out of his hand faster and wants to see more from him as a passer, like we were not getting that kind of production. And the efficiency in the fucking red zone was insane. I mean, like, you want to talk about playing the most important times for your quarterback are there to ascend in end of game situations, which maybe Fields was robbed of a couple. Maybe Fields could have been better in a couple. End of half situations, starting the game, those scripted plays. And then in the red zone, like red zone's the most important. You want to come away with 7s and not 3s. And that's something that we saw a lot of. Like they did a great job in the red zone, especially towards the end of the year, whether it was running or throwing. You would see games where he was only throwing for 137 yards, but 3 touchdowns and like 137 passer rating, right? Like like those are very, very good games by anyone's fucking standard. Sure, people want to cut people down. Like that's the way the internet is. But he played at a very, very high level in the red zone, in my opinion. So that's something to build off. Yeah, you want to get him to move the chains a little bit more with his arm and really work that short game and that quick game, which is something Justin said he's going to work on. But I mean, fuck, dude, he's scoring touchdowns. That's something we didn't see a lot of in Chicago ever.
Yeah, I think you hit on a pretty good point there when kind of talking about the Matt Nagy not having the inability to kind of call an offense around the talent that he had. And this is as somebody who, I feel like I'm just kind of hard on offensive coaches, regardless. Like if it's a Bears offensive coordinator, if it's a Bears offensive minded head coach, I feel like I'm a little hard on him. But I do have to give Getsy some credit in the sense that like he did kind of have to call an offense just based on the talent that he had. Like that's kind of like taking a second to like have the season kind of sink in and everything like that. I guess I've kind of come to that realization a little bit more. Like, did I want to see him run Justin as much as they did on design quarterback runs? Probably not, because I feel like Justin can do that while having options in the passing game, And I'm not saying like we necessarily air it out, because who the hell were we going to air it out with? You know what I mean? We didn't really kind of start unlocking Cole Kmet the way we should have been using him until like midway through the season, And even then, like, teams are going to start paying attention to Cole Kmet because they know Darnell Mooney is our only tangible wide receiver threat, if we're being totally honest.
Well, I think Claypool does take some attention off of you, but you need to execute, right? Like if they
yeah, and I don't want to use that as a detriment to Darnell Mooney either, because I thought Darnell still churned out a pretty decent season. But like it was one of those situations where Getsy was kind of trying to get a feel for what he was dealing with. We used it against him a lot, but like Getsy went from Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams for the significant part of him having fucking passing control of an offense. Like that is a little bit of an adjustment. I'm sure he loves Ecknery St. Brown. Like obviously we're bringing him back for another fucking run at training camp, but like
even Alan Lazard would have been wide receiver 2 on our team. Like
that's what I mean. And come on, dude, Getsy has to know what fucking St. Brown is. And St. Brown got significant reps this year. And I'm not trying to just hone it in on him because I thought he had some pretty good moments, but like it just kind of showed the state of our offense. It reminded me a lot of Dowell Loggins calling the offense in Mitch Trubisky's first year. It really did. Where like we have a running back. We have a really good running back, and we have Tariq Cohen behind that. Or did Tariq come in?
It was Howard and Cohen came in the same draft class. It was Cohen, Trubisky, and what's it called? Because they had those 4ths, and that's why they went the picks. Yeah, Bojack are all in the same draft class.
Okay, all right. I was just making sure. But like, dude, you have that on offense. Like, of course that's what you're gonna run, dude. We signed so many bums at wide receiver just kind of because we were just it was the 1-year deal situation. It was the Ryan Pace fucking special of like I think Marcus Wheaton was the one that was like for whatever reason, he gave him more than a 1-year deal, and Marcus Wheaton played like 4 games for us.
I know he signed Eddie Royal, and then who was the guy we traded for from the Chargers? He was like 6'5".
Dontrell Inman.
Dontrell Inman, and that felt like a breath of fresh air. It's like we have an actual wide receiver on this team.
And that's what I mean. Like, that's kind of what it felt like this past year, was that Dow Loggins type season. And that was another guy that I used to I wanted to kill that guy. But at the same time, he was trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And I guess more and more that I think about it, I like coaches that try to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, because that's one of my favorite fucking things to say. So I do think being able to see what he does in another year with Justin is definitely something I'm open to. But anyway, we kind of dropped off.
I was going to say, and you mentioned Tariq Cohen, which I hope he recovers well. But that's our background, and he is a combine hero, so we should probably get into that combine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely do love me some Tariq Cohen. That was my personal pick. It was between him and Bojack, because Bojack was a guy who talked a lot during the combine because he was dealing with his broken leg, but definitely wowed some teams with his interviews of instinctual football. But anyway, I
feel like people don't give enough credit to the combine itself. Like, people really overlook it, and they're like, it's always about the film and the analysis. Yes, but that medical portion and that interview portion, a lot of people rise and fall in this combine process. So I don't think it should be overlooked.
I mean, there's levels to it. I think there are people who take it a little bit too seriously, and I think there are people who don't take like anything out of it. You know what I mean? Those are the guys who are looking at like the college film and being like, well, this guy, regardless of what conference he's playing in, has 10 sacks. You know what I mean? That's the type of fan that doesn't give a shit about the combine. And then the guys who do care a little bit too much about the combines are like the Jagoffs, like Mel Kiper Jr. of the world. You know what I mean? Which sure, I'll give him the career that he had, but like he misses a lot. But anyway, I mean, it's something where we're gonna see some of these guys that were kind of unheard of, the physical freaks that kind of fell under the radar at some of these smaller schools. They're gonna get an opportunity to kind of showcase what they have, and we're gonna see those kind of those late kind of additions to the first, top 100. You know what I mean? That's usually where this kind of happens. A lot of these guys, we kind of know what they are. And it's hard really with the first day of the combine, because we're going off linebackers and defensive tackles. Linebackers are never really going to fucking give you some insane numbers. Owen Popo from Auburn obviously ran the 4.39 today. That's insanely impressive for a linebacker, and he's definitely going to get attention for that. That's going to be one of those guys I expect to really kind of jump up a bit.
Nolan Smith ran like a motherfucker too.
Yeah, no, 100%. And even Yazir Abdullah from Louisville, who's been kind of a guy that's flown under the radar. Dorian Williams from Tulane, he ran a 4.49 for a linebacker. That's still pretty damn good, especially for a guy who wasn't really ranked all that high. But then, like, I guess the way I kind of look at it is, like, you look at the real, like, heavy hitters at linebacker in this draft, the Henry Tutu. He ran a 4.62. That's nothing crazy. That's going to, jump off the sheet at you. Potentially he drops a couple spots because of that. Noah Sewell, 4.64. Again, nothing too crazy. Jack Campbell, 4.65, linebacker out of Iowa. Alap was raving over him in the comments a little bit. I mean, big dude running 4.65. I think that's good. I don't think that flies under the radar. I think it might fly under the radar for fans, but that's actually pretty impressive at that size, especially for playing inside linebacker. And then you look at some of the defensive tackles. You have Kajir Kainsey ran a 4.67. That's insanely impressive for a defensive tackle. Jalen Redmond, our boy Jarrett, that's one of his Oklahoma boys, 4.81. And I think
at 300 pounds ran a fucking 4.86.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, it's you always love seeing things like that. But like then you have a guy like Keanu Benton, who has been consistently one of those like kind of risers throughout the entire draft process. I got to see him a lot at Wisconsin. He is a guy that could fit insanely well as your fucking 3 technique in a very good defense. Ran a 4.08. You know what I mean? That's not something that's going to pop off for anybody, but that's still a guy that's going to like show up on game day. You have your Keandre Coburn, who ran a 5.22. I think he's going to kill it on the bench. A guy from Texas, very, very familiar with him as well. I believe he was a 3-year starter. So like I do agree that the combine is insanely important, and I love the combine every single year, and I always try to watch as much of it as I can because there's a lot that you can take out of it, especially for like guys who did play insanely well in college. You get to see a little bit more of their athletic presence. But I do think taking it too seriously, you fall into traps. That is where you draft the John Ross of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I feel like that's the perfect example.
You know, like you can't fall head over heels over these guys. You know, even if we're going to like ancient history, and I'm not trying to shit. Well, I always love shitting on Packer fans, but like Tony Mandarich, you know, the guy who's fucking going in there putting like 50 on fucking bench press. You know what I mean? That's impressive, but. And it's crazy because everyone will look at the 40 times, but when defensive tackles, linebackers get to bench press tomorrow, I think that's where we're going to really see our fucking potential stars through this draft. Because if you can look at something that can actually be used on an NFL football field, I remember Stephen P.A. That was one of my favorite Bears draft picks because we got him like in the middle rounds, and he absolutely obliterated the bench press record. He still fell because he played at a smaller school. I believe he played at Oregon State. And he ended up just being an absolute fucking mauler on the inside for us. And I think that's where you see actually what some of these drills can actually show from some of these guys. But
yeah, and I think, you know, there are different things about the combine that are beneficial for different position groups, right? Like 40 times to me for defensive linemen, defensive ends, linebackers, yeah, you want them to be fast, but like that's not the most important, right? Like you want to see that long speed from guy running routes all the time, right? A running back, someone that's trying to break away from the defense. Like that's, to me, that's important. And I think what some of these drills do, just maybe elevate a guy above another guy, right? Like you have this, hey, the tape always should come first, but now you're looking at certain things like three cone has always been a great indicator most of the time. And there's been some really good analytics coming out of guys that like ran a 10 yards split on the interior line and how many of them got below this certain threshold of a time and what their careers were. And it's like the hit rate on those guys are insane, right? So there's a couple things that I think are really important. But like that 3-cone drill really is going to show bend, quickness around the edge, things like that. So really important for edge rushers, something that Ryan Pace used to really be high on. And then when you start getting into that 4th, 3rd, 5th round where you're like, hey, we got these 3 guys where we think their tape's similar. Well, who has the most room to grow, right? Well, this guy bends around the corner at a way faster speed than this guy. So maybe we can get him coming off that edge faster, right? Or your 10-yard split for your linebackers, right? I think 10-yard split is a better indicator for those people that play inside the box in general, because then you can see how quick are you to the ball, right? Are you fast enough to essentially, after you read, get to where you need to be? That long speed is great. You want that, especially for, straight line speed, right? But like you want that to be just an asset in the process. It's obviously not the end all be all, but just an asset in the process, especially when you start getting into those middle to late rounds where you're starting to draft off traits and you're like, okay, maybe we can mold this guy into something great. The production's not there, but when you're in the 7th, 6th round, it's like, it's hard to find a guy in that draft, in that round.
Dominique Robinson for us this past year, a guy who shows a lot of potential, never really found a set position in college, but he's just such an athletic freak that you just have to get him on the football field. But I mean, anyway, with your point.
So I just think that's really important, right? Like if you look at some of these guys in terms of their times in 10-yard splits for linebackers, right? And we'll start to see those things. And like, I know Alap made a comment. I like how you just keep putting up the Nick Moreau as mid fucking comment. Like Alap, says something about straight line speed with no pads. Yes, definitely. But I don't think there should be a negative connotation to no pads all the time, right? Like I think 7-on-7 is very useful. Being able to see how receivers make their breaks, how they come, I'm not going to get technical, but like how they come up to their break. Are they over their toes? Are they coming in hot, right? Like, are they completely controlled before they make their break? So you're able to find things with guys that don't run pads. Now, the tape should give you the opposite part of that, right? Like maybe you didn't notice how good this guy was at running routes on tape because he was only asked to run 3 routes. He was their go ball specialist, their bubble screen guy, whatever. But then you get a guy like Nathaniel Dell at the Senior Bowl where it's like he's crossing everybody the fuck up, right? Like, and he's a good route runner coming into it, but it's like you're able to ask them to do more to see like, okay, let's see how far this route tree really goes. How can we use him personally versus how he was being used in college? And then you'll know if they can get off fucking press man coverage by the tape, right? Like now like you put those two things together to complete the puzzle. So I do think the combine is an important part, but similar to how I say if you're going to use a stat to argue your point, like that can't be the end all be all. There has to be some thought behind that. I'm willing to have discourse with anyone, but if you're just telling me it's because this guy has 12 sacks and this guy had 10, that's not going to fly, right? Like, so you need the whole piece of the puzzle in order to really to complete an argument or an evaluation.
Yeah, no, for sure. And not to cut you off, you had anything else, but I guess the way I look at it, and I mean, we're only able to go off so much right now because we've only really had the first day of like actual combine workouts. So work with us a little bit here. This is kind of why we're talking about this whole subject. But like, I think, and I might have touched on a little bit my first time I brought it up, but I think the combine, the best way you can look at it is guys who've already proven it on the football field in college. This is where they rise their draft stock. I don't think, and it happens every year where a guy has a bad combine performance and for whatever reason it tanks his draft stock. But like, think of a guy like Joey Porter Jr. has the name of Joey Porter, you know what I mean? Was a pretty damn good quarterback at Penn State, but I think teams want to see what he actually is as an athlete, you know what I mean? I don't think a bad day at the combine sinks him, and I don't think it should, because I think he's proven that he's a pretty good ball player. But a good day at the combine could go from him being like pick 20, top 15 to like hovering just under that top 10. And that's a big money difference. You know, there's a lot of money made on the combine, and it's not by the media. It's not by the teams. It's by the players themselves that are working themselves into a better draft situation, you know?
Well, and I think like one I want to point out on the defensive line that has stood out, and a perfect example is Byron Young right now, right? Like Byron, and it's with those third, fourth round prospects, like you could see them getting like Velus Jones, right? Drafted way higher than projected. Byron Young came in and tore this combine apart. Like that's another thing too. I think 40 time is no longer the king. It's vertical, 3-cone drill, 10-yard shuttle. I know that 40 times what everyone likes to see, and everyone wants to see if the fastest guy, someone breaks the record, who's running in the 4.2s, who's running in the 4.3s. Like that's, the sexiest part about the combine. But, I think the vertical and broad jump, it does indicate explosiveness, and that's huge. And Byron Jones ran well in all of his split. I think everything but the 10-yard split, he ran well. Let me just double check that really quick. But he's a guy that I really liked. And while I was watching Will Anderson, we could probably start getting into the more top tier guys, which Will Anderson did not have as an impressive combine as people thought he would. But Byron Young, when I'm watching the Tennessee game, because I'm trying to look at Will Anderson, I'm like, dude, who's this guy? Like, he's got an incredible fucking motor. He's not the biggest or strongest guy, but like his motor never stops. He's got one of the best motors I've seen in the draft class for his position group. And I wasn't seeing that same motor from Will Anderson, right? So a guy like that, now you're seeing that motor, you're seeing some of the intangibles. Maybe he's a little undersized, but he could have bumped his stock like 2 rounds, right? Like in the first round, it's not doing as much. It might confirm something for you. The meetings are more important for those guys, right? To see how they're built. First round picks are a huge investment, but when you're looking at those trait guys, and like I said, when the tape matches up with the testing, you're like, okay, like maybe we have something here. We're willing to take a risk with a 3rd round pick here instead of trying to scoop him in the 4th where we think he should fall, right? So those guys too are making, like, between the Senior Bowl and the Combine, they make a huge case for themselves.
Yeah, no doubt. And I also think like another one that kind of flies under the radar as well is like when you look at the top tier guys, like like a Will Anderson or Jalen Carter or any of those defenders, or even some of these wide receivers every year. You have to pay attention to some of these guys in the combine that maybe fell under the radar as far as like draft ranking and everything like that. The guys who gave the top tier guys trouble in college, you know what I mean? Like somebody who, like, every time I think of Will Anderson, I always think of Darnell Wright, the Tennessee tackle, who absolutely fucking was a nightmare for him the entire Tennessee Alabama game. So like that's a name that I kind of have in the back of my mind where it's like I kind of want to see what Darnell Wright does on the bench press, because like you're talking about like everyone's favorite like kind of drills at the combine. Besides quarterback drills, like to actually see him like throw an open air, I love bench press day. Like, it is by far my favorite. I love seeing fucking beefy boys on the bench and being
Sheer
able to just
power,
kind of,
yeah.
oh, dude, it's awesome. It kind of reminds me of just like bench day in high school. You know what I mean? Like the fucking day where it's like, all right, who the hell is going to be the biggest man walking out of the weight room?
Well, it's funny you say that because like it, the draft is such a funny fucking thing. Like the complete opposite happened for DK Metcalf. Like DK Metcalf, I feel like got put into a box where he was a really good player in college as well. Like maybe he needed some more development, but like I don't know, maybe people just thought he was a freak athlete and wasn't going to be a football player. And that's why he fell all the way to 64. But like he tested fucking insane in pretty much every single category. I'm sure his RAS score was like almost as high as it could be or as high as it could be. So it's just it's kind of funny how the combine, everything draft works. But since you mentioned Jalen Carter, we should probably address that. Right. So a warrant was put out for his arrest from Athens. He was in some way involved in the car crash that left 2 people dead. Tragic, awful situation. I'm not going to comment about how we feel about it, or none of the facts have even been brought out fully. Right? Like there's some things that are out, but like there's no full story. Jalen Carter says he will be acquitted of any crimes once all the facts are presented, right? So, but this is something huge to come out where he's missing the first day of the draft. He's already at the combine today, posted bail. Bail was not a egregious amount. He was charged with 2 misdemeanors, but it's caused a lot of tension because, especially on Bears Twitter, right? And I'm tragedy aside, because I don't want to treat it like it's something that's not delicate, because it is. 2 people lost their lives. It's horrible. Awful situation, right? And I'm sure Jalen Carter feels awful about it no matter what, because it was friends, people he was associated with. It was after a celebration. Like it's not a good situation for him, right? And I'm sure he's feeling it. But when you think about it strictly from a football franchise GM mindset, I don't see how you can, I mean, like, let's be real here. Like, there's a lot of people, we see it on draft day. Everyone in their family died, lost to this, or, people getting arrested, things like that. Like there are a lot of people that are drafted and perform in the NFL. I think Dallas at a time had like 27 out of 52 players on their roster have had some form of an arrest, right? Like this is a reality that is in the NFL. So my thing is, I think GMs are going to look at it as, first, let's get all the information and see exactly how he was involved. And then depending on that, I think it really goes from there, right? If there was a direct involvement where it was like he was the cause of things or something like that, I think this changes completely. But right now, he was just given 2 misdemeanor offenses. And then when you look at it from the big picture type of things, it's a bad image. But like, you're building your team for 4 years. So I think really what you're going to do is say, what's the cutoff point? Like what player is comparable enough to Jalen Carter? Because we said it, and there's a lot of people that said it, like he was going to be number 1 if the Bears did not get enough in terms of value. A lot of people think he's the best player in the draft. Other people do think it's Will Anderson, but I think the overwhelming majority is Jalen Carter. So you're going to look and say like, okay, well, you have Will Anderson, you have Tyree Wilson. Like, how many players are in a close enough bracket to be graded by where it's like, I feel comfortable taking him because these are as close to can't miss prospects on our board to really, to say like, hey, it's justified. I don't want the optics of this, versus like really dipping into that next tier of player and being like, hey, this is now the risk of this bust is worse for the franchise than what I think Jalen Carter and the optics of drafting him is going to be long term, right? And I think that's how a lot of GMs are going to look at it. I'm sure there's GMs that are going to completely take him off the board, but I just feel like I feel like there is some things in terms of owners and GMs and stuff like that. It's really spinning in such a negative direction. It made me feel like he was directly involved, right? And I don't know like all the facts, and none of us do, but it just seems like people are trying to get him to fall at this point.
So I guess the way I would look at this, which very well said, Lucas, you did a pretty good job there. Um, if I'm an NFL GM, I guess the way I look at it, I kind of see how other teams have handled similar situations to this. It's a little bit unprecedented whenever it happens with like a top pick, but it has happened over the course of history across multiple sports. There have been situations where there have been players who have been kicked off college teams for illegal activities, and they still end up finding their way in the league. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of crazy things, and I don't know enough about the Jalen Carter situation, but growing up, I know quite a bit about I know quite a bit about the law. Especially considering I kind of wanted to be a lawyer growing up. So like I kind of know the whole process that a lot of this stuff ends up going through. And what seems like a police investigation that had been going on for a while, because it's been a minute since it had been announced that all this had happened. So obviously there was a pretty thorough investigation that was done, and it kind of came back to Jalen, at least being at the scene, at least kind of being with these people during the day, or potentially even being with them within minutes of this accident happening. I don't force unless there's something that really they're kind of just trying to kind of pigeonhole until they want to get it in front of a judge. I don't see additional counts charges coming on to him. I think the police force having this long, I think with a state prosecutor having this long to kind of have an idea of what to bring charges across, I think this is what we're going to get. And while you could say whatever you want about how you feel about Jalen Carter and what happened that night, which it's awful. Anytime anybody loses their life, it's always an awful situation, and my heart goes out to anybody in the Georgia area that was affected by that. Um, it's hard to say. It's hard to say where you could really put a lot on Jalen in that situation, where you could really think that anything more can come out of it. Because if a thorough investigation's gone through, and I think one thing a lot of people are going to jump to, if these are the only charges he gets, is it happened in Athens, Georgia. He's a Georgia Bulldog. That could be the route that people could go with that. And if they want to spin that narrative, that's totally fine. But you know, in my opinion, that's something that never gets brought up in the media. If that's how they played it, that's something they would have made go away very quick. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I guess at the end of the day, if those are the charges that are brought against Jalen, um, and if that's enough for a GM to take him off their board, and if it's enough for Jalen to potentially fall in that draft, so be it. It's one of those things that it's impossible for him to be able to control right now. He's going to try to say all the right things. He's going to try to handle himself like a complete pro. I guarantee you, throughout his entire interview process with all these teams, now that he's at the combine, he's going to be pretty forthcoming with a lot of these teams about how everything went down. It seems like he is strong. He has a strong foundation around him of people. At least that's kind of always been my gathering of Jalen, as a person and kind of as a player, with how he's kind of handled himself on and off the field throughout his time at Georgia. But if I'm a GM, if I feel good about my team's culture, I'm not worried about bringing in a Jalen Carter whatsoever. And that's something that really gets lost in the fray. And I think it's something we see with like a Mike Tomlin. I think it's something we see in Baltimore. I think it's something we see in New England. I think it's something we see in pretty strong leadership type teams in the NFL. Is if our culture is strong enough, we'll bring you in, and we will help you turn around what's going on in your life. I mean, we see it with Belichick all the time. I think it's easy to bring up a guy like Aaron Hernandez, which of course, because that's always going to be one thing that's going to be brought up. But like, it's impossible to blame the organization for something like that. But the organization has done a good job with guys in the past who have had a bit of a shaky background that have kind of revitalized their NFL careers. So if you're an NFL GM that takes Jalen Carter off your board for something like that, it's hard for me to blame you. But at the same time, if I'm an NFL GM and I feel strong enough about my culture, and I feel strong enough about what I'm building putting into the building, I'm not worried about that. I'm bringing Jalen Carter into a situation like that where we can embrace this young man. We can make him a better version of who he already is. Someone who we can acknowledge the mistakes he might have made in the past, but that we're going to continue to let him grow as a person, because at the end of the day, Jalen Carter is a 21-year-old kid.
Yeah. And I mean, like, this is all, again, pending that I have got like, this is all the information that's out and I understood it properly, right? Like a lot of people are kind of like, oh, Mel Kiper, he's popping champagne to this one because he said he had character issues. Like, I don't know. This seems to me a lot more like being irresponsible than having a character issue, right? Like an irresponsible mistake that really turned out worst case scenario, right? Like, so again, I don't like want to give too much of my opinion on the matter overall because I like not enough has come out. But to me, that's more of an irresponsibility thing, which is something that goes away with age, or in my case, doesn't. But you look at more of the character thing, and I think it's, dude, he could have easily had his agent handle everything, fucking hid until draft day, right? Like he could have easily gone away, and he went up and faced the music the second he got out of jail. Like that's, to me, that says more about character than fucking street racing, right? Like that's what it sounds like the whole thing is, unless I'm misunderstanding it. But that to me, that seems like character is, to me at least, how you respond to coaching, how you respond to adversity, how you treat the people around you, right? Like, are you good to the people around you? We found out Jalen Carter is buying lunches for people and stuff like that. And no one is defending what happened. And there is a part of responsibility for Jalen Carter and these people's deaths. And I'm sure he beats himself up about it, but I don't know, maybe I'm old fashioned. I just feel like the reaction overall is like, he cut their fucking brake lines, right? And like set them up. Like that's what I'm seeing. At least that's the vibe I'm getting from it. So I just, like I said, unless I'm misunderstanding something, like I feel like it's more of a irresponsibility thing than a character issue, right? It's not like a reoccurring, and they've had multiple violence accounts, or they've beat their partner, like domestic violence, right? Like it's not the same to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of nailed it off the top though, is like we don't have all the information. We kind of have to see how this whole investigation goes. I think we live in a culture that kind of jumps on things a little too quick, and kind of people have to form an opinion quick to kind of get it out there, I guess. But like, I don't know, man. I don't know what happened on that night. And besides Jalen Carter, the people that survived that crash, and the Athens police, nobody else does either. You know what I mean? I do think you highlighted a good point though. Like Jalen could have easily avoided the NFL Combine. He could have not gone, and everybody in the world would have understood. You know what I mean? Like he could have done his own private workout. He could have set it up with his agent, like where they got him in front of, people where he was doing all the combine drills. It just wasn't at the NFL Combine. He could have talked to any NFL team that he wanted. There was definitely ways around it, and we've seen similar things happen in the past when guys haven't gone to the combine or haven't done the pro day. Like there's options. It's not like if you miss combine or the pro day, you automatically can't go fucking run in a field running a 40-yard dash with a bunch of NFL guys.
I mean, the heat's on you, dude. This happened fucking the day before. Like,
and he did. He faced the music. He got himself out, on a fairly small amount, which by the way is pretty par for the course for the charges involved. So it's not like he kind of got out of that easy. It's pretty normal for a misdemeanor. And he went to the combine. And he's like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to face fucking music. I'm going to show these people that I can handle adversity, that I am professional in the face of adversity like this, because like any way you want to see it, like this is an incredibly big thing to take on in front of the national media shitstorm that is the NFL draft and the NFL Combine as a 21-year-old kid. So like, we don't know enough about the situation, so it's hard for me to comment too strong in defense of him, or in like destroying him or tearing him down. But I think it does say a lot that he was willing to go there. He's pleading his innocence. Obviously it's a night that's going to live with him for the rest of his life, regardless of what happened or how innocent or how guilty he is. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to say. You know,
Yeah,
I see a young kid who has the whole world of potential in front of him, somebody who's worked his way to get to where he's at today, and it would just be a damn shame to see something like that go away. But you know, that's life.
Kind of what I was highlighting, like to look at it from a GM's perspective, like this doesn't change the fact that he is the best player in the draft. Quarterbacks, everyone involved, right? Like if he was number one on your board, you still think he's the best player in the draft, right? So, you know, you just got to wait and see to everything that's revealed and how, you know, deliberate his involvement was, how bad it is. And then I'm sure they're going to move past it pretty fucking quickly. If I know the NFL like I know it, I would assume it's, you know, it's
Yeah, and that's the entire other point of the
it
equation.
goes either way, right? If it
It's
turns
the
out to be
NFL
a situation, then he's gonna not get drafted. Like he's gonna fall big time. And if they find out like everything's kosher, like he might drop a few spots. But people are talking about him going 17 to Pittsburgh and things like that. I don't think he, you know, like you said, like even if it is a bad situation, like you look at a team like Philly, hey, we have an extra first round pick. We can keep stacking our fucking defensive line. We can get the best player in the draft at 10 if he falls. Like, I don't see him falling past Philly because they have that culture built, right? Like they do have a very strong culture from front office to ownership to, as much as I hate it, head coach, right? Like they do, and they have a very good leader as their quarterback in Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and I think that's a situation where I think that was a spot he was going to go anyway because of quote unquote character issues, which like I don't think you're going to hear like teammates say that they thought something like this was going to happen with Jalen Carter. You know what I mean? I think that's just egregious. And anybody who's making an argument like that, you're just so incredibly off base. But yeah, dude, you have to look at the scope of the NFL. Like, if we're being totally honest, Lucas, like, look at players who are even currently employed on NFL rosters for some of the heinous shit that they've done.
Dude,
You know, I'm not.
Deshaun Watson got fucking the largest guaranteed contract in the midst of a 65-person civil lawsuit for sexual harassment. Like,
How much money?
Understand the reality of what the NFL is.
How much money does Tyreek Hill take in a year?
Dude, it's fucking countless, right?
Like, dude,
the
great.
NFL knew Ray Rice violently attacked his fucking girlfriend or fiance and did not take action until fucking until the video came out and it was public outrage, right? Like that, like let's just fucking call a spade a spade. We know what the NFL is.
Yeah, no, that's kind of that's the
what I
point
was
I
trying
feel
to
like
get
really
behind,
kind of
right? Like,
pulls up that whole fucking point because it's like as terrible as it might sound, this is the NFL. You know, if we're just talking brass tacks here, we've seen guys not fall for less or fall for more. We've seen guys continually be, you know, brought back. I mean, dude, fucking Richie Incognito had a job in the NFL for quite a long time. And he said some of the most heinous shit I've ever heard. You know what I mean? So like
launched a weight at a fucking human being.
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like it's the NFL. So like I love the NFL. I love Chicago Bears and all that, but like you have to know exactly what it is. Let's be fucking real. But anyway, kind of flying off that point because we did pop off that for a little bit, but I do think it is important to talk about stuff like that. Even with us, you know, being a podcast, we're just kind of, you know, about fun and shit like that. Like,
well, I do think it does directly impact the Bears, right? Like
it does because if we trade out of the first pick, and if he does end up falling, like I have a hard time seeing Ryan Poles pass on a Jalen Carter if he fucking. I think he's a guy that the Bears are kind of looking at anyway. That would be the guy I think we stick and pick if we were to trade back and stay in the top 5 or the top 10. But like if we're getting murmurs around the draft that this guy is going to keep falling, he's the guy we're going to hone in on very, very quickly.
I think so. That's something that Kansas City is kind of synonymous for, right? Like getting guys on the cheap because they either had issues with their last team or they fell in the draft but were uber talented but had issues, right? Like Tyreek Hill was an example you brought up. So, like I said, I understand the human up like being upset and understand like how tragic the situation is, but I'm just trying to give you a realistic perspective of the NFL and how these GMs are thinking. Like,
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and it's tough situation. It's something that I wish didn't happen. I wish nobody lost their lives. I wish Jalen didn't have to deal with something like this. Again, I do want to highlight that, thoughts go out to the people that were impacted by this. It was definitely a heartbreaking situation in Georgia. Just an awful situation all around. I don't want to see more people's lives be ruined by it, and I want the facts to come out, and I want justice to be served in the correct ways. I don't want dogpiling. I don't want people to get slaps on the wrist if, there was more at hand, but again, it's a developing situation, so it's hard to really say for sure on any of that stuff. But
yeah,
I guess moving forward, we do have quite a bit of the combine left to go. Like I said, this is only the tip of the iceberg. We only got to see like 40-yard dash, 10-yard split, saw some guys do vertical jumps. And there's still ongoing stuff going on with the combine as we speak. It's kind of a late night situation, and they're going to be right back in the morning. Lucas, you're going to be in Egypt, my friend.
I'm going to be in Egypt. Yeah. So the reality is I'm 8 hours ahead. So it would have to be like if you made it home before 4 p.m. and I recorded like midnight Egyptian time, we can do that. It kind of sucks too, because we were going to tease the draft, but then of course we just got into everything. One thing I want to tease, just go look up Zach Charbonnet. Okay. Cause I'm going to have a lot to say about him. In the coming
I've already had to hear it all, so I'm
not talking to you. I'm talking to the listeners, Jadoff.
I know. Go ahead.
Just look up Zach Charbonnet, okay? Because you're going to hear a lot about him.
Yeah, to listeners, you will hear a lot about Zach Charbonnet.
He's got an absolute monkey wrench, dude.
Yeah, no, I've got quite a few fucking that I could go on about as well. But yeah, no, that's definitely
to keep it with your approval. I do love Keanu Benton, dude. Like, I think he is the perfect zero tech in this fucking defense, right? Like, I think he is the perfect, like, interior. I'm just going to fucking wreak havoc on your interior. And that's why, like, do I care about a 10-yard split or a 40-yard dash for a guy that's fucking 300 pounds that's supposed to be just destroying bodies? Like, no, I don't. Like, not at all. It's a nice perk to have. You definitely would like to see it a little more with your edge rushers, but like DT with Brian Brees being as fast as he is, like, no, I want to know his explosives. Like, and I guess it's a little bit different because Brian, you could probably bounce up and down the line, especially in sub packages where like Keanu's going to stay interior and probably be more of a 2-down player. But either way, like, that shit, like, that's why, like, you need to look at the right measurables, right? Like Keanu Benton, if you see him fucking put up 28 reps, 35 reps, like something wild, then you're like, damn, dude. So that matches up with what I see on tape, because he just tosses fucking bodies out the club, if I'm going to quote DJ and Bucky, my guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really think, dude, a 40-yard dash can't tell you how nimble somebody is on their feet. I actually got to watch quite a bit of Keanu Benton. He's from my hometown of Janesville, Wisconsin. He graduated from Janesville Craig, actually, which is the high school that a lot of my siblings graduated from. So that's been kind of cool to watch, kind of where he started to where he's been. He's always kind of been that nimble guy. Like I said, dude, I don't think a 40-yard dash does credit to how good his defensive footwork is. He's someone who can hit a gap and get to it quick and kind of explode through a double team to get there. And it was just awesome to see him go from that to get the entire recruiting process, getting signed at Wisconsin, to the player he is today, man. He's always just been somebody that whenever you see him, just like potential is just reeking off of this dude. Like, he has the potential to be like one of the best defensive linemen or defensive tackles in the game at some point in his career. Will he hit that? That has yet to be seen. You know what I mean? Like, I thought he showed glimpses of that at Wisconsin, but there were times as well, and this is me being a big Keanu guy, where he did kind of fall into the fray a little bit. But with his last year, with the Badgers being as bad as they were, unfortunately, and kind of Jim Leonhard not being able to hone in on the defense because he had to take over head coaching duties like midway through the season, I think that affected his stock a little bit from really him making a big run towards the end of the season. But he is a guy that if he falls to like the third round, it's impossible not to want to fucking snag him up. Even even if you end up with Jalen Carter in the first round and you see Keanu Benton just kind of sitting there, kind of falling, God,
Oh
what
yeah,
a
dude,
combo those two would be in on the interior, dude. That would be one of those interior defensive lines that we'd be telling our fucking kids about one day. Like it could be that good. Now Keanu's more the potential laden guy. Jalen's more the sure thing. But yeah, no, I'm a big Keanu Benton guy. I'm glad you've kind of picked up on him as well. Obviously I always love my Wisconsin guys, but like Keanu is a guy that I would definitely prioritize. And if we didn't end up with a guy like Jalen Carter, that's a guy that you really have to take a strong fucking look at.
I've been seeing him go in the third round. I don't know how how deep he makes it, and every fucking mock draft simulator is different. But he's been someone that I've been consistently seeing in that like beginning of the third round. So, wouldn't hate to beef up the trenches.
Potential is there. It was just like his actual performance at Wisconsin was about year. You know what I mean? Like he never totally like lived up to the hype that he came in, but he came in with some insanely high hype. And all the measurables are there. I think he's going to have an absolute fucking mollywop day on the bench, as well as my guy from Texas. I can't. Coburn, yes, Coburn.
Andre Coburn.
Yeah, there's two defensive tackles coming from Texas. Coburn's the one that I really like to look at because I think he would fit with our style as well. And he's just 3-year starter, can move people.
He's very good, but I feel like at least, I know I said don't look too much into this, but I believe he profiles as more of a 3-4 end, kind of like your Akeem Hicks's and Bilal Nichols's. But I do think he's got enough size to kick inside if you need him to. So there's a lot of prospects out there that I like.
There's a guy from the Chargers in the early 2000s who I think compares very well to Coburn. I'm trying to think of it, what his fucking name would be. Kind of a shorter guy because Coburn's not necessarily like a tall dude. He's not like necessarily that type of exterior, but like he's just kind of got this like low center of gravity type build to him, and he's very good at kind of staying like low, and that's very, very good when you're that type of size. I think you might be thinking of our other defensive tackle as far as profiling as a 3-4 defensive end because Coburn's fucking dude. He's a handful. He's very.
That's the one that's like fucking 300 pounds or 340 or something wild like that.
Yeah, that's who I'm talking about.
With the other defensive, a Jobo or a Jigbo or something like that.
Let me should know his name off the top of my head, but I'm kind of spacing on it a little bit. Morojo Ajomo, yeah, that's who you're thinking of. Yeah, he's gonna be more of that style you're talking about. He's a little bit smaller. I don't know if he's quite hitting 300 pounds. He could actually be like a 4-3 defensive end, in the right system. But Coburn is just a fucking space eater, just a big old.
Yeah, dude. No, he's a big motherfucker, dude.
I would say two names really look at for me would be Coburn and Benton as far as the bench press goes, because I think they're both gonna just have fucking giant days over there.
You would think as an A-gap player, like, shouldn't be able to get moved out of that fucking hole.
And he wasn't, a Texas defense that was kind of up and down, especially playing in the Big 12 the last few years. He was a constant in the middle, just a fucking thorn in every single team's side. He was always fun, a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
But I mean, Lucas,
we're running long now.
Yeah, I was say, unless you have anything else, I think that's a good place to cut it. Definitely covered quite a bit as far as linebackers, edge rushers, defensive tackles. Got some names out there. Of course, as we get a little bit closer to the draft, and once we get a full picture of the combine, I think we're going to have a lot more assertive opinions on a lot of these guys. Like I said, I'm interested to see some of these first round projected guys and see kind of how they measure up physically. Because obviously they show they have talent, but I think where you're going to see these guys really hone in into the top 15, top 10, even some guys will sneak into the top 5, I think, with great performances at the combine who are already kind of projected around that area. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. And I'm actually really interested in finding out about JSN,
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, I'm his medicals, right? Because like he's not running. Yeah, he was banged up all of last year. Was supposed to be one of the better guys in this class, but like I could see him falling into the mid to late 20s if His medicals aren't great. I could even see him, if his medicals aren't great, I could see him falling out of the first round in general. But he's not running. He wasn't supposed to run well. I'm sure he will run at his pro day, but just kind of weird to me that like you would think he's going to run, like he's going to come in and compete. Yeah, Zach Charbonnet, no matter what. I think we can close it out on that. But I'm interested, right? Because that's someone that obviously there's some Justin Fields, like he knows Justin Fields and some familiarity there, and Fields gave him a shout out, like someone I would love to have, right? So just want to see that.
I mean, wide receiver at your alma mater. I feel like when you're pressed about something like that, you almost have to do that because he's a big Ohio State wide receiver in the draft. I feel like we're going to get that same answer with every Ohio State wide receiver that comes out personally, especially with Marv Harrison potentially coming out next year.
That's a different story. He's a different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%.
A true worthy of a top 5 pick already. So God only knows.
100%, dude. The guy's wearing fucking Apple Watches during games. I had to see it firsthand, and it was terrible. But, yeah, no, I think that's a good spot to close out. Njigba, that's a guy we're going to have to talk about because that's a guy that gets talked about a lot in the Bears fan base. There are people who are just absolutely head over heels in love with them. I question how much college football they've watched last 2 years with that because, obviously you saw what he did in the Rose Bowl run. But you also saw what he did last year. And, people like to pretend that Njigba didn't play at all last year. Definitely did. So, there's something.
He played a few games, and just played like shit.
Just did not look like the same wide receiver that he was. But anyway, that's a good spot to close out. We definitely we have some other stuff that we're going to have to talk about moving forward. We'll see about how the whole Egypt thing works out. Me and Lucas probably try to figure something out, especially with the combine ending next week. But we will keep you guys in the loop on that. I've been Duke Coughlin. You can follow me at the Pod Guy Duke. This has been Barely There podcast. I've been joined by the Ayatollah Egyptian Lucas Perfetti. At Lucas Perfetti 46. Be sure to follow him over there. Be sure to follow the pod at Barely There Pod. Be sure to subscribe. We can see those subscriber count on Spotify now. So anybody who's telling us they're not they're subscribed at Spotify and we're not seeing those numbers going up, we know you're lying. Be sure to subscribe over on YouTube as well. We've been getting some pretty good YouTube numbers. Always like that. Like and subscribe if you like what you're hearing. Be sure to hit that bell so you can always get notified for the live chats. I know there's a lot of people who have reached out to me personally being like, hey, Duke, why am I not getting notifications when you guys go live? I want to ask you questions. I want to talk shit. I want to call you terrible names on YouTube while you guys are recording. You got to hit the bell. It's that simple. But anyway, this has been Barely There, and bear down.
Bear down.